Society at a crossroads. Transition from hierarchy to network society. Humanity is entering a period of transformation unlike any in its long history. For roughly 12,000 years, since the first agricultural settlements gave rise to organized communities, human societies have been structured as hierarchies. These vertical systems, built on centralized authority and top-down control, were well suited to eras in which change was slow, information scarce, and coordination limited by geography. But the 21st century has shattered those constraints. The exponential growth of science and technology is reshaping civilization into a complex, interdependent system. And all complex systems, from ecosystems to the human brain, share a common organizational logic. They function as networks. This emerging mismatch between hierarchical social structures and network-driven technological realities places humanity at a decisive crossroads. The transition from hierarchy to network is no longer a matter of political preference or ideological debate. It is becoming a structural necessity. The question is not whether this transformation will occur, but how, and whether humanity can navigate it without destabilizing the foundations of global civilization. Exponential growth and the rise of a complex society. The defining feature of our era is exponential acceleration. Scientific knowledge now doubles in a fraction of the time it once did. Technologies such as artificial intelligence, biotechnology, quantum computing, and global communication networks interact in ways that amplify complexity. These interactions create feedback loops that reshape economies, cultures, and institutions at a pace that outstrip the adaptive capacity of traditional hierarchical systems. Hierarchies evolve for a world in which information moves slowly and decision-making can be centralized without catastrophic delay. But in a hyper-connected world, information flows horizontally and instantaneously. Problems such as climate change, cybersecurity, pandemics, and financial instability do not respect borders or bureaucratic boundaries. They emerge from the interactions of countless agents and variables, forming patterns that cannot be controlled from the top. Complex systems, whether biological, ecological, or technological, share several characteristics: distributed information processing, adaptive behavior, nonlinear dynamics, emergent properties. The human brain is a quintessential example. Intelligence arises not from a central command center but from the coordinated activity of billions of interconnected neurons. No single neuron rules the brain. Instead, cognition emerges from the network. As society becomes more complex, it begins to resemble such systems. The global economy, digital communication networks, scientific collaboration, and cultural exchange all operate through decentralized interactions. The more interconnected the world becomes, the more it behaves like a network, and the less compatible it becomes with rigid hierarchical structures. This is the first major argument. Hierarchies cannot process the volume, speed, and diversity of information generated by complex, network civilization. A new organizational architecture is required, one that mirrors the distributed intelligence of the systems we are creating. The greatest challenge in 12,000 years. The transition from hierarchy to network is not simply a political reform or technological upgrade. It is a civilizational shift on the scale of the Neolithic Revolution, when humanity moved from nomadic bands to settled agricultural societies. That transformation unfolded over millennia. The current one must occur within decades. For 12,000 years, hierarchical structures have shaped human identity, culture, and power relations. They have defined how we work, how we govern, how we educate, and how we understand authority. Hierarchies are embedded not only in institutions but in our psychology. We are accustomed to leaders, chains of command, and the idea that order flows from the top. To transition away from this deeply rooted pattern in a single historical moment is unprecedented. It requires humanity to adopt organizational principles analogous to those of the human brain: distributed intelligence, continuous feedback loops, and adaptive coordination. This is not merely a structural change, it is a cognitive and cultural one. The second major argument emerges here. The transition to a network society is the greatest challenge humanity has faced in 12 millennia because it requires a fundamental redefinition of how we understand power, identity, and collective intelligence. This transformation demands new forms of public consciousness, new economic models, new governance structures, new approaches to global security, new cultural narratives about cooperation and interdependence. It is a shift not only in institutions but in the very architecture of civilization. Key challenges of the transition. The reorganization of society into a network form will generate profound challenges. These challenges are not peripheral. They strike at the core of how modern civilization functions. 5 stand out as particularly decisive. Emergence of public self-awareness. A network society requires a population capable of perceiving itself as part of a shared, interconnected whole. This is not merely a matter of education. It is a matter of collective consciousness. Citizens must understand that their actions ripple across global systems, that cooperation is not idealism but necessity, and that the health of the whole depends on the participation of each part. Public self-awareness includes digital literacy, civic responsibility, ecological consciousness, understanding of interdependence. Without this shift, network systems risk becoming chaotic rather than collaborative. Transformation of the economy. Hierarchical economies rely on centralized ownership, linear production chains, and competitive scarcity. They are optimized for control, not adaptability. But networked economies operate differently. They favor decentralized value creation, circular resource flows, open source innovation, platform cooperatives, distributed manufacturing. The rise of digital platforms, peer-to-peer systems, and collaborative production models signals the early stages of this transformation. The challenge is to redesign economic institutions so they support distributed creativity rather than concentrate power. Use of resources. A network civilization must manage global resources as shared assets rather than as objects of national or corporate competition. This requires new governance models for energy, water, biodiversity, data, the global commons. Resource management becomes a matter of planetary coordination rather than local exploitation. The shift from competition to stewardship is essential for long-term sustainability. Disarmament and security. Hierarchical systems tend to accumulate weapons as instruments of control. Network systems, by contrast, depend on trust, transparency, and mutual vulnerability. The transition therefore requires reduction of military arsenals, new mechanisms for conflict prevention, cooperative security frameworks, transparency in military technologies. This is one of the most difficult challenges because it requires states to relinquish tools of dominance in favor of tools of cooperation. Governance. Traditional governance is centralized, slow, and often disconnected from the complexity of real-world problems. Network governance must be participatory, adaptive, data-informed, multi-layered, globally coordinated. This implies a shift from command and control politics to systems-oriented governance. The architecture of governance must begin to resemble a neural network rather than a pyramid. The third major argument becomes clear. The transition to a network society requires deep structural changes across consciousness, economy, resource management, security, and governance. These challenges are interconnected and must be addressed holistically. Bottom-up transformation and the rise of the collaborative society. Historical transitions of this magnitude rarely begin from the top. Hierarchies have strong incentives to preserve themselves. Instead, change emerges from the bottom up, from communities, networks, innovators, and citizens who begin to organize differently. This new form of society can be described as collaborative. It is characterized by decentralized decision-making, shared responsibility, open knowledge flows, cooperative problem-solving, flexible, adaptive structures. A collaborative society does not eliminate leadership, it transforms it. Leaders become facilitators rather than commanders, connectors rather than controllers. Power becomes relational rather than positional. The seeds of this transformation are already visible. Digital communities, citizen science, open source movements, global climate networks, grassroots initiatives, decentralized activism, collaborative innovation ecosystems. These are early expressions of a civilization learning to think and act as a network. The fourth major argument is that the transition to a network society will be driven from a bottom up through collaborative structures that gradually outcompete hierarchical ones by virtue of their adaptability and resilience. A call to free thinkers. Humanity stands at a crossroads. The exponential growth of science and technology is pushing society toward a level of complexity that hierarchical structures can no longer manage. The transition to a networked, collaborative civilization is therefore not a utopian aspiration, but a structural imperative. This transformation will be the greatest challenge in 12,000 years. It demands new forms of consciousness, new economic models, new approaches to governance, and a redefinition of global security. Yet it also offers a possibility of a more resilient, intelligent, and humane civilization, one capable of aligning its social structures with the complexity of the world it inhabits. The choice before us is stark. We can cling to hierarchical systems that are increasingly unable to cope with the demands of a networked world, or we can embrace the opportunity to build a civilization that functions more like a brain, adaptive, interconnected, and capable of collective intelligence. The choice is no longer ideological. It is evolutionary. The direction we choose will determine not only the future of our institutions, but the future of human evolution itself.